Welcome to the City Club of Eugene's June 4th, 2021 program, Entrepreneurship in the Emerald City. This is the 35th program for our 2020-21 programming year. My name is Kitty Piercy and I am the City Club President. Support for the City Club is provided by our members and sponsors. You can become a member of the City Club at our website, cityclubofeugene.org. Our programs are always available to you on the YouTube channel and on our Facebook, and are broadcast on public radio station KLCC 89.7 on Mondays at 7. We have both business and in-kind sponsors, including our diamond sponsors, which are Kaiser Permanente, University of Oregon, Peace Health and Lane Community College, as well as generous support from the City of Eugene and from Lane County. In today's program, we welcome Sally Bell, Matt Sayer, Marissa Zarate. Biographical information on our speakers is available on our website, cityclubofeugene.org. I would like to thank Andrew Kallick for coordinating today's program. From its founding as a trading post along the Willamette River in 1862, to the testing of the first waffle shoe of a plucky startup called Nike at Hayward Field in 1972, to the dubbing of the area as Silicon Shire in 2012, Eugene has been home to entrepreneurship and innovation. The Eugene Area Chamber of Commerce, Onward Eugene, and the University of Oregon were recently awarded a $500,000 federal grant to expand programs for the Innovation District in Eugene's Opportunity Zone. The project is designed to foster entrepreneurship and build new businesses in Eugene by expanding the Business Accelerator and Mentor Network through the Onward Eugene Accelerator Program and the Mentor Experience from the University of Oregon. While an emphasis on entrepreneurship has helped to diversify the region's economy in recent years, particularly after the decline of the timber industry in the 1980s, many questions remain. How can we ensure equitable access to entrepreneurial opportunities in Eugene? How can Eugene position itself as a business-friendly city while maintaining its unique culture? As Oregon Business wrote, can Eugene continue attracting new businesses and boosting wages, all the while maintaining affordability, public space, and a renowned independent quirky character? We'll get the answers to that question and many more from an all-star panel of guests. We hope you'll join us. Our format today includes a question and answer period with City Club members via Zoom.
Hello and welcome to the City Club of Eugene. My name is Andrew Kallick and I'm a member of the board and the organizer of today's forum on entrepreneurship in Eugene. We have a terrific panel of guests with us today. So with no further ado, I'm going to turn it over to each of them for an opening statement, followed by questions and answers from our audience. First up is Sally Bell. Sally.
Thanks so much, Andrew. Good afternoon, City Club, and thanks for the invite to speak today. I'm Sally Bell. I'm the Vice President and Executive Director of Technology Association of Oregon in the Southern Willamette Valley. TAO's mission is to support an inclusive world-class innovation economy that strengthens our regional tech industry. And I have the opportunity to oversee our regional efforts and connect the dots with our tech communities here in Lane County, also with the Mid-Valley and Central Oregon. So I think we'd all agree that a strong startup community is essential for economic growth. And our challenge is really how to leverage this pivotal time for our region to make it an ideal environment for growing and scaling companies. There's no doubt the last 15 months has changed our chemistry as humans, as a community, and as the way we do business. We all have had to evolve immensely through the pandemic and solve for some of the most essential hierarchy of needs. So as we come out that other side, we have an opportunity, and I would argue an obligation, for our future generations to make some strategic decisions as a region that will determine our growth trajectory. So over the past 10 years, what it means to be a tech company has really changed. In 2012, being part of the Silicon Shire meant something pretty specific. And as companies become even more tech-enabled, there are even greater opportunities for us to define the benefits of choosing to do business here in the Southern Willamette Valley. So currently TAO has over 450 member companies and community partners across the state. Here in Southern Willamette Valley, that represents about 15 to 20% of our membership. And we support them through access to business resources, talent recruitment, workforce development, advocacy work, content programming, thought leadership. We've got a large menu. And for startups specifically, being a member with TAO connects them with other founders. It connects them with investors, to mentors. It gives them much needed visibility and promotion to raise capital, and it gives them a voice in advocacy. So we have some really exciting startup members in TAO here in Lane County. Of course, Sheer ID being one of our favorite success stories. Other startup members include Fleet Nurse, Bitcork, recently joining member of Porter. And there's other companies like Nulia, a startup that wasn't founded here, but relocated here to grow with its proximity to the university and to grow junior talent. So clearly we have a lot to offer tech startups. People come for the quality of life, and they come for the infrastructure, thanks to the great work of Matt Sayer's leadership in terms of our local fiber downtown. They come for the proximity to the universities for great talent. We also consider Symantec used to be here, which was the largest tech employers in the region. And now there's a wealth of cybersecurity and talent professionals all over, and we can really consider them and the possibilities of growth for a region in terms of an asset. So we engage in building entrepreneurship through lots of partnerships. For cities of our size, this is absolutely a team sport. We partner with public sector and local orgs like Onward and the Chamber, the city, Lane Workforce, and the university, because we just can't do this work alone. So just in terms of a couple trends going on across the state and our region that kind of show the health of the ecosystem. Year over year, the tech industry has grown 5.6% in Oregon, and there's been an 8.3% increase in tech firms in 2020. TAO has seen an increase in engagement, in membership, unprecedented growth, and it's a good sign of the resilience of the tech sector that they want to stay engaged. They're very nimble. VC funding in Q1 of 2021 was also at historically high levels, according to Business Oregon. Some pretty big deals, including a $200 million deal going to a startup company in Bend called Dutchy. So there's healthy signs of raising money, but it's also challenging in Lane County, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So some of the biggest challenges too are considering the fact that less than 2% of the VC funding this year has gone to women founders. So there's a lot of good work to do. So some other challenges when it comes to having it all. We want to be the community to attract businesses and talent and boost wages, maintain affordability in public spaces, and also maintain our special quirky Eugene sauce. So access to capital is going to continue to hinder us unless we come up with some really innovative solutions. For women and BIPOC, it's been a long-standing struggle. You have to prove your credibility and that you have business chops, and you have to know when to go to the ask for the ask, and there's that grit and perseverance. And frankly, you know, when those systems weren't built by you or for you, it continues to be a challenge. So we've got a big opportunity to retrofit the funding mechanisms for our startups. Housing will continue to be an important challenge and opportunity for us. Homeless and unhoused population is on the rise without adequate solutions, and affordable workforce housing. There's just not enough. And so it's a huge leverage point, and frankly, one of the largest pain points in companies across the state when it comes to scaling. For pandemic recovery, we're in strange times. Some things are going at warp speed and others feel like they're just stuck in the mud. And I think combining that with the psychology of the Oregon way, which is very much firming our own patch, we're really called to collaborate in new ways. We do it really well as a region. I think we need to think about doing it across the state and really accelerate those opportunities. I took a break earlier and I was thinking about the fact that it'll be 93 degrees today on June 1st. And so I know we're all enjoying that sunshine, but it'll come at high cost at the end of August. So we've got a lot of challenges when it comes to resilience and wildfires and the impending Cascadia. And finally, downtown. It's the heartbeat of our city. It's largely deactivated in the past couple of years, and so returning its vibrance will really take everyone operating on all cylinders. And so I think some of our greatest opportunities are going to be around funding, and I'll let Matt talk about that. In terms of visibility, it's really about how do we identify the best sources of capital and get our startups in front of those. It may not be here in Lane County. Can we grow companies here and send them elsewhere to scale a little bit more and come back? You know, there's lots of interesting models we might consider. So we've got lots of thriving sectors: ag, food, manufacturing, healthcare, sports, bioscience, of course, tech. We've got more to leverage there and the intersections between them to foster more startup development. So I'm excited to dig into this discussion today and how we make Southern Willamette Valley a thriving region for growing and scaling companies. Hope I didn't take too much time. Thanks. I'll pass the mic.
So good afternoon. I'm Matt Sayer, Managing Director of Onward Eugene. And thank you, Andrew, Ralph, and Kitty, and everyone at Eugene City Club for the opportunity to have a conversation today. I thought I'd start by giving a brief primer on what Onward Eugene is, since we're a new organization and most folks in the community have not heard of us just yet. So then maybe I'll touch on the recent EDA grant, our community one, and then reflect on all of those things related to today's topic. For background, Onward is an economic development nonprofit, and what that means is that we create economic prosperity in our community. Our approach to the work recognizes that the economy wasn't necessarily working well for everyone before the pandemic. And so we're doing economic development a little bit differently than has been done in the past. We're private sector led, and very much like Sally and the TAO, our general approach leans into a belief that economic development is a team sport. Our organizational mission is straightforward: it's prosperity for all. And this mission has really resonated over the last year, and we've been able to forge some really tremendous partnerships with local organizations, including the University of Oregon, Lane Workforce Partnership, Access Media, Northwest Community Credit Union, among many others. On this panel, actually, I've had the pleasure of working with Sally and the TAO on a digital resilience forum earlier this year. And Huerta de Familia has been really receptive to our outreach as we have worked to include entrepreneurs from diverse backgrounds into Onward's programs. So Onward's work actually spans 4 initiatives. The first is business recovery and expansion. That initiative is led by Nicole Desch. Of note is an incentive tool that Nicole has, which provides $3,500 to employers, and these are grant dollars, for each new hire. That is called the On-the-Job Training Program, and it's very effective at creating economic mobility for people whose next employment opportunity seems just out of reach. Our second initiative is focused on talent and leadership, and that is led by Cassie Stoner. She leads several programs under that initiative, including Onward's Career Tour program, where we showcase careers at local companies to local students. Losing talent to other larger cities is frequently talked about in our community as a problem. Some call it the brain drain, and talent is an input to growth for large companies and new startups alike. For me, in addition to being the managing director at Onward, my focus is on regional marketing and employer recruitment. And despite the pandemic, we've had some significant successes over the last year in a couple of 4 instances. One is helping find a buyer for the long vacant Heineck facility. Welcome to Eugene's Stratacash. And Onward was also part of the team that helped recruit Southwest Airlines to the Eugene Airport this past winter. So people in Eugene often talk about wanting more high-paying jobs in our community, and this initiative aims to create them. One of the programs that I'm most excited about that Onward is planning is the inaugural Business Welcome event being planned for September. So we envision literally rolling out the red carpet to entrepreneurs and new businesses in our community each year, and really focusing on cultivating a welcoming culture in our region. So, and then on to our 4th initiative, which is a strong startup ecosystem. And Caitlin Vargas is newly hired at Onward, and she leads this effort, which is where we were able to secure the $500,000 in funding from the Economic Development Administration. So we've seen really strong demand for Onward's entrepreneurial services over the last year. The pandemic has made room for lots of things, and one of those things is for people to explore new ideas, and they've been gravitating towards our Ideate Pre-Accelerator program and the huge Launchpad Accelerator to sort of help them along in their entrepreneurial journey. Over the last year, we've had to pivot. Pivot, I guess, is a startup term, but it's actually applicable here for our programs, probably much of the community as well. So our pivot was to offer entrepreneurial support services online with the support of the new federal grant. So with that support, we're able to double the frequency of those programs, effectively helping twice as many aspiring entrepreneurs as before, while ensuring that our accelerator programs are free of charge to participants. So our entrepreneurial programs focus on growing traded sector companies. And I'll say, just give a little bit of color of why that's relevant for today's topic, that term traded sector. So traded sector basically means that they are companies that sell goods and services in markets outside of Oregon, bringing dollars back into the state. So one example that I like to give is that if you're looking to start a food truck, Onward's programs may not necessarily be the best fit for you, but I may be your first customer. If, however, you're building a point of sale system, some software for all food trucks, that is the type of startup that we focus on. And those are the types of startups that are going to directly create the most high-paying jobs here in Oregon. So traded sector firms exhibit a strong multiplier effect, and that's sort of a geeky technical term, but basically it means that for every job created in an industry like tech or bioscience or advanced manufacturing, there are several more jobs created in our economy, and that's a really important concept. These industries pay wages to people that at levels where they can afford to eat at a food truck, and that they can afford to do things like buy a house and also to give back to this great community that we all call home. So I look forward to the conversation today with my fellow panelists, and we'll pass the mic over to Marissa.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for this opportunity to come speak to City Club. It's so nice. I'm Marisa Zarate. I'm the Executive Director of Huerto de la Familia, but I'm here representing Huerto de la Familia and also our close partner organization, Centro Latinoamericano and Downtown Languages, in our currently growing collaboration. I'm so happy to be with you here to share about the work that Huerto has done. Many folks in the community know us as a gardening nonprofit, and that is true. We started initially as an organization to connect Latino immigrant families to opportunities for growing their own organic food in community gardens. And the way that we expanded to providing business-related services is that we had clients growing food and wanting to make prepared foods such as salsas or tortillas, tamales, and also wanting to start restaurants, which are natural connections to a garden and growing of food. But over time, what we saw was that the need for Spanish-specific, culturally specific services for Latino families wanting to start businesses in Lane County was so great that we needed to expand and serve all sorts of businesses. So although we initially started as an organization serving food businesses, we now serve folks who want to start photography businesses, party planning businesses, of course, still restaurants, construction companies, translation services, you name it, we have folks who are interested in exploring it as an option. And so that's an exciting part of our work now, is getting to help launch a whole variety of small businesses in our community. We have some key programs and ways that we do that work. So a main component is through educational opportunities. We provide a business class twice a year. And it's a 3-month business class. So it's a big commitment from folks who sign up. They're really serious about starting their businesses, and they're willing to commit 3 hours a week for 12 weeks for a total of 36 class hours toward moving their business forward. And the goal of this class is to help them start out by looking at their personal finances and kind of getting a better grasp on those, and then moving from there into business finances and business planning. Eventually, when they graduate, they have an entire business plan ready to go so they can apply for funding opportunities and start to actually move forward with launching their businesses. It's an incredible class. Even in the time that I've been at Huerto de la Familia, it's evolved so much thanks to the direction of our program manager, Alex Perez Urbina. She has really tailored the class to be culturally specific. So it's not just a regular class translated into Spanish. It is so much more than that. The entire class is taught in Spanish, but it's also adjusted to be culturally relevant curriculum so that families who take the class can really connect to the material and understand it and interact with it in a different way. And part of what that's meant for us is that we use a peer education model in our class where the teacher isn't just an instructor, but more of a guide. And we really try to focus on all that clients bring into the class themselves, because I think it's very true that all of us here today, we tend to doubt ourselves, second guess ourselves, and underestimate ourselves. We don't give ourselves credit for all that we know and all of the knowledge we possess. Well, the same is true for folks who take our class and participate in our business planning program. We see that people underestimate how much knowledge they hold in them. And so a huge goal of our class is to gather that knowledge from various participants and have folks share that knowledge and together work their way through the curriculum, sharing their own experiences and learning the information that they need. Another unique thing about our class is that we utilize it as a way to build a network. So almost every class has an expert coming in from the community to teach and help guide on a specific subject. I have colleagues from law school that come in to talk about business structures like LLC versus what type of structure you would want your entity to have for your business. We have people who come in and talk about business finance, business outreach and advertising. So how do you do social media for your business? And so every class has somebody coming in from the community, and at the end of the class, in addition to the knowledge, students, clients have access to that entire network of humans that they met, or at least currently Zoom met, that they trust to go ask their hard questions to, that they feel comfortable approaching for that additional information they need later on. So that's a really key component, is building that network of support so that when businesses leave to go launch, they have not just our organization, but an entire range of people there to support them and answer questions and help them out. So those are some key components that make our class very different. And when clients graduate from the class, it doesn't end there. So our organization provides ongoing technical assistance to ensure folks are successful. They receive help on whatever topics are specific to their needs, specific to their businesses. Maybe they don't know how to apply for a food handler's license. Maybe they need to figure out how to negotiate being able to have contracts with the University of Oregon or the county. These are components that we help walk people through one-on-one that don't really apply in the larger class setting. So our staff provide that one-on-one support. And another form of technical assistance we've been focusing on lately is building a broader network of Latino-owned businesses in the county. So we have Jaina Covarrubia, who is going all around Lane County, connecting with businesses and building an entire network, not just of businesses who have been our clients, but of businesses overall. And now with COVID, that's become more important than ever because we've seen businesses need help. And the more businesses our organization is connected to, the more businesses we can connect to resources like grants and loans, not just the loans, but technical assistance so they can get through the application process of applying for them. So there's a lot of resources we've added in COVID to access funding and other needs, but the more businesses we know, the more we can make sure less businesses fall through the cracks. And the last component is advocacy, helping businesses advocate for themselves at the state level and the local level for policies that will benefit their businesses and policies that specifically impact businesses owned by people of color. And so that is the work that will help uplift communities of color so that we're not accidentally left behind as we do all this incredible work that Matt and Sally talked about in our community, that we ensure communities of color are included and also have an opportunity to thrive and to really like have that sense of getting to embrace that entrepreneurial spirit and carry out their business owning dreams. So that's what we're here to do. And I have more to say, but I think that's about time for now. So I'm going to stop there.
Thank you all for your opening statements. Now we have about a half an hour for questions and answers. Our first question comes from one of our City Club members, Karin Knudsen. Karin.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all so much, presenters, for sharing those thoughts and helping to contextualize innovation in our local tech opportunities. My question is following up on something that a few of you mentioned in your presentations, and that is the amount of capital or investments that go to BIPOC-led startups and women-led startups. And I did some quick research that indicated that both of those have recently reached all-time highs of roughly 2 to 3%. So a tiny amount of funding that is going startups and companies led by BIPOC or women founders. And I'm wondering if you all could offer us some thoughts about what you think needs to change within the industry in order to see more support and more funding being directed to companies that are being led by different people and non-white males or non-white women.
I can take a stab. I'm so curious to hear from my fellow panelists too. I think when I think about the best opportunities, we go back to the start of that value chain, which is who are we putting into this, our system input. So education, I'm thinking about our amazing universities here locally and how actively we're recruiting more women in non-traditional pathways. And I'm thinking about U of O and how active are they in, I know that everyone is giving it a big effort, but in terms of really making a monumental shift, if we have more women in BIPOC, in business, as engineers, in more technical careers, and having, more training on the early side, we're building more aptitude and strength on the early side of that value chain. So by the time they're positioned to be founders, they also not only have the resources and training, but hopefully the networked resources. And that's what, I love what Marissa was talking about in terms of kind of the clustering and the networks of businesses that can really work together and support. So I'm thinking about kind of the start of that value chain. Curious what others have to say.
So, those are broad-reaching sort of challenges, I think, in the capital landscape, and not just unique to Oregon, but nationally and perhaps globally. Maybe the way I would sort of like deconstruct that is by focusing on specifics and local efforts. Here locally, I think that there's really some purpose-driven work that starts with intentionality. So being specific about what groups you reach out to and building relationships is a really good place to start. For Onwards programs in our pre-accelerator and Huge Launchpad accelerator, it's also something that we measure, and sort of that old adage, what you measure, you can improve. And so some of the tactics that we've used to be more inclusive and to lend to intentionality in our outreach are even sort of reevaluating just basic things like event names. So specifically, we had an event that was Access to Capital was the event name, and sort of through some workshopping with local entrepreneurs, is, well, could we make that event name just a little bit more approachable? And so we went through some iteration, and ultimately where we landed with was retitling the event, How to Further Your Ideas with Other People's Money, right? So it's simple, but it worked. And so we had really fantastic, diverse audience for that program, and we know that because we measured it. And so making profound and sort of macro changes, I think, starts with the micro and can be as simple as things as intentionality and small tweaks at the margin, when taken together, can make great change. So those are some of the small things that we've done locally. I'm really proud of our diversity metrics in the Onward startup programs. I think in our first pandemic driven pre-accelerator, the majority of the founders in our program were women. About a third were minorities, and about a quarter of folks were unemployed due to COVID. So that's what I know.
Thanks, Matt. I would be happy to speak to this, how we increase investments in women and BIPOC-led orgs. I think part of it is shifting, it's the systems that have certain expectations, right, for what is deserving of investment. So shifting our perspective around what makes a business that's worthy of investing in. And I think what that has to do with is values, right? I know that recently United Way was looking at their budget with an equity lens. I'm the nonprofit liaison to that board, and their equity person, Corey, asked, let's look at our budget with an equity perspective. How do we apply equity perspective to money decisions? And I think the same thing with investments, because if we're expecting to change women and people of color enough that they fit the criteria investors are looking for, then that's not going to lead to change on a big level, because that's just not going to be possible or realistic. But if we change what we're looking to invest in based on our different values that we come up with, then I think there's many people and businesses out there that already exist that are waiting to be invested in. In our business class, we teach the class not just to focus on making profit, but we teach to focus on profit, principle, and planet. So like values in how you have your business. I'm probably getting the words wrong, and our program manager would get it right, but it has to do with not just looking at profit, but also looking at your values as a business and what the impact is on the planet. And planet can mean other humans, it can mean the actual environment, but your impact beyond your business. I think if investors were coming in with more of that perspective, their investments would naturally change, because they would see where their investments might not make the most return, but have other types of return, like boosting a family that is able to go from living in poverty to having a life where they can safely take care of themselves, meet all of their basic needs, and possibly even begin to build generational wealth. So it really has to do with, I think, the investment perspective. And I know that's easier said than done than when I'm not doing the investing. But I think as an organization, that's what we dream of if we were going to put our dream out there into the universe, that investors would start to think about how much power they have with their investing to change actual lives, not just to grow wealth and grow the economy. So when we're looking at the city of Eugene, our city could really change if we invested in folks who maybe typically wouldn't qualify, in ways that we're striving to do from a million different angles. So I would love to see investments in small businesses and micro businesses. Those businesses don't get the funds. And I think it's less about them changing how they're doing what they're doing and more about the investors changing what they're looking to fund.
Did I ask a
Their
question?
priority. Mm-hmm.
Did I ask a question?
Absolutely. Go right ahead. Kitty Pierce.
Just a follow-up to this is, it seems to me all over this nation, in accordance with what the question Karen asked, the women have taken a hit in the job market hugely. And I hear all the pieces that you're doing. I'm just wondering if you're putting all those pieces together and letting women in the community know that you see them there, and you are all going to make a concerted effort to help them get back into the market, help them become more successful and so forth. That's something that is very intentional, that you see it, you see the need, and there is something that all of you can do as a partnership.
Yeah.
And I don't know what you to say to that, but
Thank you for that. Yeah, the metrics are staggering in terms of the number of women who have left the workforce since the start of the pandemic. I think it's like 2 to 3 million at least. And one thing that TAO is thinking a lot about here locally and statewide is the opportunity to upskill and reskill, and how much more effective and expedient that is, rather than sending folks back for another degree.
mm-hmm.
And so really thinking about stacking and nesting those opportunities for pathways, because when you think about tech, pivoting into a tech career, in some ways, some could be very technical and might take, a longer on-ramp, but there are also many opportunities to get folks quickly pivoted and reskilled into tech, where there's going to be, immense growth in the next decade, just in terms of talent demand. I mean, right now, Matt and I have shared these comments back and forth more recently. It's just the job market it's the hottest job market in 15 years, and people can't hire fast enough. And yet then we also have all these folks who have, had to leave the workforce. So there are immense opportunities here.
Maybe I would just follow on with just a brief comment. Kitty, this goes to our brief conversation prior to the beginning of recording with commentary on the Innovation Hub at 942 Olive Street. And so as we think about the future of that facility in a post-pandemic world, how can we be more inclusive programmatically? And so one of the ideas, frankly, that we've been sort of kicking around is, what if we offered point-in-time daycare, so that mothers or fathers with kiddos could pursue their entrepreneurial dreams on site there at the facility, and not have to worry about the daycare piece, which is, I think, something that is holding a lot of parents back right now. So that's just sort of a tactic that is an active conversation among community groups presently.
This is something that we've focused on for a long time, even before the pandemic. And as we know, the pandemic highlighted and accented many existing disparities, and women of color are going to have the biggest disparities in terms of business, launching businesses and then having success in that process. We've looked at this specifically, and actually even before COVID, we're in the process of creating a curriculum specifically for women, business curriculum for moms who maybe had certain needs that they would need during the class, such as childcare, like Matt said, for the class itself, and then maybe looking at different types of businesses that they could start from home, businesses that would work with their existing schedule and kind of their family life. So trying to get creative about what business means and giving women more opportunities to kind of incorporate it in, rather than having to go out to be able to start a business. And so that's something we're still thinking about very much so, and we hope to continue that. And going back to the investment conversation, a key purpose of investments could be to help balance out inequalities in wealth, intergenerational wealth. So communities of color do not have the same access to intergenerational wealth building. And so women, particularly even more so than communities of color at large, are going to have the least access to intergenerational wealth to launch their businesses and need the most support in terms of investments in order to be successful.
It would, just one comment, it would be really nice if our government partners really understood where we were trying to go with this. That may be the case or it may not, but I really think when you're trying to send a message to the whole community, you have to kind of try to funnel it through the channels that speak to the whole community. And I think this is a very important time for people to know you see them and you want them to succeed in our community.
Thank you all. Thank you, Kitty Piercy. Zooming out for a minute, prior to the pandemic, Oregon Business wrote a provocative piece on entrepreneurship in Eugene. And they posed the following question at the end: can Eugene continue attracting new businesses and boosting wages, all the while maintaining affordability, public space, and a renowned, independent, quirky character? Sally Bell, you talked about this in your opening statement, the quirky sauce, as you said. But I'm wondering what each of you think of that question. Can we, in a sense, have all of these things? And if so, how do you develop this entrepreneurial economy, both traded sector and non, while maintaining that character that the city is so well known for and that the city cherishes?
I'm just going to think out loud, because I don't actually have a great answer for this, but I think we can try to have it all, but there's certainly a cost to that. And I think I think what I made in my opening statement is this takes all parties operating on all cylinders. Mm-hmm. And it is exhausting. But we also have to be unified on where our priorities are. And there's some low-hanging fruit. I think that we can get those cylinders amped up. But then this is a portfolio approach in terms of how we tackle this. There's no one-size-fits-all solution, or like, okay, if we just solve housing, then this will happen. It's like, we have all these things that are kind of resetting in this year. You have all these folks migrating into Oregon, and they may be working remotely and earning wages elsewhere. So that's an interesting dynamic, and the wage piece is very tricky. Companies reevaluating their compensation structures entirely, giving really interesting, bonus structures and things if you're working from home, if you're doing this, if you're, totally different paradigm for kind of that worker circumstance. And then you've got, and then you've got the fact that nobody can find a place to live. Our neighbor's house, sold in the middle of the night to someone from California, which is like, again, it's the story. And so I think for us to really kind of like grow into this next phase, we've got to really think about all these different parts and how they can work together, and how we can really ignite like our best resources who are working on those things. We've got to divide and conquer a little bit more. We can't all try to solve the same problems all the time either.
I can follow on that. So a lot has changed in the last 3 years since the time that article is written. But one thing that hasn't changed is that place still matters. In fact, I would say that place matters even more post-pandemic than it did 3 years ago. And the pandemic, to sort of echo some of Sally's comments, the pandemic has shown us that a lot of occupations can be done remotely, and remote workers are gravitating towards places that have the best amenities and the best livability. People are escaping places like San Francisco and Seattle, and the livability factors that made Eugene and Springfield and rural communities around Oregon good places to live before the pandemic make them great places post-pandemic. So one of the emerging economic development strategies here regionally is that we're leaning into this trend and to help sort of build community inside the remote workforce that's already here. Employees working for companies that at least not yet, but soon maybe might have offices here locally. So the idea is to support remote workers and sort of promoting the employment opportunities to the local workforce. And then in time, perhaps there'll be enough employees working for a specific company remotely that it could make sense for them to start an office here. So that really does beg the question of affordability, particularly housing affordability. This is a super complex topic, and there are dozens of local organizations and great leaders like Karin Knudsen that focus on this issue specifically. I think a portion of the solutions focus on utilizing public dollars to subsidize housing, and that can and does work. I think where Onward Eugene as an organization has leverage is a very complementary approach, and that is in helping people into occupations that frankly pay more, and making the existing housing stock that we have here locally more affordable. So that's a piece of it.
I don't have as much to comment in terms of bringing businesses in, but in terms of how do we increase business and have more businesses and keep kind of the culture that we all love about the place that we live. A key solution is to nurture businesses from within our community. There are so many people here who have dreams of business ownership, but until we provide the resources, the opportunities for learning, the support as they launch, those dreams won't be fulfilled, and we will be missing many opportunities to have contributions to our community that could exist. I see the incredible businesses that have opened up as a result of our organization. One of them is, for example, Tortilleria El Chile down off of near Sponsors. And I go there basically every weekend now to get tortillas. So it's not just a new business, it's an asset to the community. It's something we would not have had if it hadn't launched and we were missing. and it adds to our community to have it. But we have to provide services to nurture these businesses within our community. And we saw that during COVID as a result that I was honestly surprised to see. When the pandemic started, I thought we'd see a decline in people taking the business class and a decline in people launching their businesses. And it was exactly the opposite. We had bigger classes than ever before, more businesses graduating, more businesses launching than we had ever seen before. And folks thought, I'm going to take my economic situation into my own hands. If my job is touch and go and sometimes I'm employed and sometimes I'm not, I'm gonna take control of this myself. I'm gonna start my own business, and then I have control over whether I have income and can support my family, because the solution is never to just go without income at all, right? There's mouths to feed, and families had to get creative. And the beautiful thing is it led to some incredible businesses launching. And so how do we get to that point? Not just from crises. How do we encourage folks to step up to that challenge because they feel supported, and do that continuously over time, not only in times of crisis where it's needed?
Thank you so much. Marisa, if I could follow up, you have spoken a number of times now about the importance of seeing entrepreneurship beyond just the guy who starts a tech company in his garage and it becomes Microsoft. So instead, think about it not just big, but also small, micro, across industries, and also across the county, not just in metropolitan Eugene, but throughout rural Lane County. So I'm curious if you have identified different challenges and opportunities for people outside the metro area. Are there infrastructure challenges that folks face in rural parts of the county or the region that people in Eugene don't face? Are there opportunities in that part of the region that we might not have in the city? Any wisdom on that would be appreciated.
Yeah, I think the challenge is just the disconnect. I mean, I know that many immigrant and Latino families here in Eugene metro area feel disconnected from each other and disconnected from the community at large. And that's a huge need that our organization meets, not just through the classes, but through our gardens, is that community space and the community connection that we see people wanting. And so when we look more rural, folks don't necessarily have opportunities to meet those needs. So I would say that's the challenge, is how do we bring people together for innovation? And like I just said earlier, folks are either going to launch their businesses when there is such a need that they can't not launch their business, or they're going to launch their businesses when they feel supported enough and see that there's resources to help them. While in those rural communities, if it's not COVID, the resources aren't really there in a way that's going to encourage folks to move forward with launching. And so I think our challenge for us is, how do we figure out how to get resources beyond the metro area out to more rural areas and to a population that's even more disconnected in rural areas? And so our first step as Huerto de la Familia has been to build that network. That's basically step one, is to know who is out there, and then to go from there and figuring out what services folks out there need. So right now, building a network, having a network beyond our metro Eugene Springfield area, and then seeing what we can provide to them and connecting with other community partners to ensure that other communities get the resources they're needing and asking for.
Yeah, to piggyback on that, Marisa, there's so much of our county that is rural, and broadband. There's never been a bigger pain point in the pandemic than us feeling like, oh my gosh, our biggest pain point is that broadband piece for connectivity for families and for businesses. And so we are at a real point of inflection now, and I know that there have been funds earmarked for rural broadband for our county. And we'll find out more about what that looks like soon. But I think our ability to advocate for those resources is like absolutely essential, and we have to do it kind of across all organizations. But I think on a different thread, a common piece for all businesses starting up is that in this day and age, everyone has some sort of tech need, right? Like most companies are tech enabled in some ways. It's not just necessarily the reliance upon connectivity, it's also they probably need a website, and then there's a banking piece, and like there's so much more tech enablement on the startup side than ever before. And so I see a real opportunity too in this moment to really inventory those tech needs at the micro scale of businesses, and to really see how we can better resource them, because you know, they've been obviously kind of scaled towards larger companies who kind of gobble them up, and it's also splashier. But there's a real opportunity to bring, you know, more resources and services, because frankly, we have them here. We're very resource rich in that space.
Sally mentioned the rural broadband issue, so maybe I'd riff off that for a moment. Certainly, there's a lot of pressures on access to housing, and which is an interesting sort of conundrum in a rural versus urban context. Having visited the gymnasium at Mackenzie School District, you look on the wall and you see pictures of graduating class. And over the years and the decades, the graduating classes are getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And so I think we might be in a unique time and place where with the funding that's coming through from RDOF and ARPA and NTIA and others with a focus on rural broadband, that it might be able to extend to change that dynamic in a meaningful way, like a once in a lifetime sort of opportunity as it relates to infrastructure investment, and better position rural communities for current day economies, ones that better lend themselves to tourism, one that better lends itself to remote workers who, given the choice, would work from beautiful places like up the Mackenzie River and so forth. In terms of like meaningful work in this domain, you know, I mentioned that Onward was started during the pandemic, and like many in our community, sort of trialed by fire. One project that we have going right now is called Project Overcome. It's funded by the National Science Foundation and US Ignite, and we're working to establish more resilient internet communications infrastructure up above Blue River. And so that looks like a new communications tower that brings in a resilient second internet connection to the region, and then provides an educational network to support students and families while they're rebuilding access resources. So those infrastructure investments will cast a lifeline to those who are rebuilding their lives, and then pay dividends, I think, in the long term, potentially reversing the long-term population trends that rural communities are experiencing.
Thank you all. Corinne, you have one more question to close us out today.
I do, and it comes from another community member who was curious about this program today and the insight that the three of you would offer. A quick summary is it's sort of an ask for the three of you to distill down common misunderstanding about your work, and one thing that you wish the broad community better understood about what Huerto and Onward and TAO are working to accomplish in our community.
Matt, you want to lead us here?
Well, I'll take a stab at that. Let's see, common misconception. I think that one common misconception is that employer recruitment means that you are bringing a company and all of its employees to a region. And for me, it has never worked like that. It has actually been the opposite. So some case in point, Stratacash is working to hire here locally like gangbusters. Sally mentioned the sunsetting of Symantec, but that gave rise to a sunrise for SentinelOne, rather, a cybersecurity company here locally. And they came here with the explicit purpose of hiring laid off workers. So I think the misconception is that recruiting companies here and employers here is synonymous with bringing other people and really not the availability of new jobs. And for me, in my experience, that hasn't been the case. And rather bringing new employers here, they're coming here because they want to access the region's great talent. And so we do well to train the next generation of thinkers and doers and innovators to have the skills that are sought after by high wage employers. and to sort of level up our region in that way. So that's one take on the question.
Okay, I'll take a stab too. I think this is a misconception I might have come into a little bit when I took this role about a year ago about the perception of what the tech community is here locally and statewide, that it's, you know, that it could still be, you know, just the white bro club. And when I look at the work that we do and the cross section of businesses, okay, majority still white founders, but being that aside, and we're working towards it, the services that, you know, that we're involved in and the resources and the education, the advocacy is really aimed at so much more, and it's so much, it's inclusive, it's holistic, and it's, you know, essential to kind of community-based solutions. And so, you know, I want folks to know that TAO is an open door to all, and that we don't have a mold for how to build a company and what that looks like. And, you know, I think that the whole West Coast has a lot of work to do around, you know, how tech is evolving and how it's becoming much more agile and nimble and accessible, frankly. And so I'm excited to be a part of that. And yeah, what was the second part of the question, Karin? Misconceptions, but then solutions?
Well, misconceptions, and I think you covered it, that I mean, with what you mentioned about the open door, that what you wish people understood about the work that your organizations are doing. It's all really, you know, integrated and systemic work that the three of you are touching, and it's then easy to have it misunderstood.
Yeah, and we're all nonprofits. You know, City Club of Eugene, Onward, Huerta, and TAO. And so, you know, we are mission driven first. And I think that makes us also very united in the way that we seek to collaborate.
I'd just like to say that I appreciate the positive advocacy from all three of you. Thank you so much for being a voice for positive steps forward in our community. As you know, sometimes a misconception is that only bad things are happening. And it's very important for people to be able to look out and see where they're going and what the possibilities are. And you are certainly contributing to that. And I think it's very important for how we feel about ourselves as a community and the optimism that people have that they can be part of a healthy future for their families and our community.
Thank you.
Teresa, what are people missing about your organization that they should understand?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot behind the scenes folks don't see, and that the misconception is that we're smaller than we actually are in terms of the work we do. We are small in that we don't have a huge staff team, but we are so big in terms of what services we're providing to the community and how many businesses we're launching per year. I think our last class in the fall had 12 or 13 businesses that launched after the class. So it's so much more than a class, I think, is the biggest misconception. And I envision in our future some rebranding to present ourselves as more of a, I'm blanking on the word, but a full service business serving agency. And we really do the whole range from the class to the technical assistance to the network developing to the advocacy locally that we do ourselves, and also key component connecting clients to opportunities to do advocacy for themselves on issues that affect their lives, which I think is really important, especially because these are missing voices in those conversations. When we go up to Salem and we advocate on measures that impact immigrant-owned businesses, like translating business registration documents into the top 5 languages besides English, that's something that impacts the whole state. If our voices aren't heard, then that's not passed. There are families all around the state who are going to suffer when they go to launch their businesses. And so really just providing the whole range of services, that's what we would want the community to know we're doing at this point for advocating for Latino and immigrant entrepreneurs.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. That's all the time we have join me in thanking our panel and join us next time with the City Club for Eugene.
This has been our June 4th, 2021 program, Entrepreneurship in the Emerald City. Before we proceed, I'd like to recognize our diamond sponsors. Kaiser Permanente exists to provide high-quality, affordable healthcare services and to improve the health of our members and the communities we serve. More information at www.kp.org. Support comes from the University of Oregon. University of Oregon has helped Oregonians question critically, think logically, reason effectively, communicate clearly, act creatively, and live ethically. More information at the University of uoregon.edu. Peace Health is proud to serve Eugene, Lane County, and beyond. As your hometown healthcare partner for more than 80 years, our mission is to keep you and your family healthy. Learn more at peacehealth.org. Lane Community College transforms lives through learning. LCC provides comprehensive, accessible, high-quality educational opportunities that promote student success. For more information, visit lanecc.edu. I would also like to acknowledge our gold sponsors, Hirschner Hunter Attorneys LLP, Homes for Good, Hearing Associate Dr. Sandy Ibarra, and our Ruby sponsor, Johnson & Johnson, Lucas and Middleton. Support for the City Clubs comes from Johnson & Johnson, Lucas and Middleton, a team of experienced, compassionate attorneys fighting for justice. If you have been seriously harmed by wrongdoing and need help, contact us at justicelawyers.com. Before we thank our speakers today, we'd like to thank our income sponsors. KRVM 91.9 Radio, Pack Info and Simplified Computing LLC, Dotson's Photography. And a special thank you to public radio station KLCC FM 89.7 for airing City Club's programs on Monday at 7 p.m. Our programs are also available on your YouTube channel and on our Facebook page. If you are a City Club member, you can ask a question at a future taping of our programs. If you are not yet a member, you can join and then participate. More information is on our website, cityclubofeugene.org. Our next program, we will talk about why playgrounds are worth the price. A conversation with Emily Proudfoot, the principal landscape architect for the city of Eugene. More details and information about future programs can be found online at the City Club's website, cityclubofeugene.org. Now I would like to thank today's speakers for a great program. Sally Bell, Matt Sayer, Marissa Zarate, thank you so much. And to all of you, this concludes today's program. Be well and stay safe.